Hello and a warm welcome to another edition of To The Point. From cow politics to the murder of rationalists and the return of the Sahitya Academy Awards by the writers, the big question is the present government allowing the element of free expression to flourish, or there's politics over the liberal space? Joining me now is a noted columnist, author, a former diplomat, and he's a popular face of the Congress. I welcome Dr. Shashi Tharoor on To The Point.
Hi Neelu, how are you?
I'm fine, sir. I want to begin by asking you on the latest incident of where beef curry, there was politics over beef curry, and which happened to be in Kerala Bhavan. What is this new kind of politics in the name of cow protection?
I think it's disgraceful, all this beef policing that is taking place in our country. That we have become a country where the authorities and the police have to worry about what people are eating and not eating is, to my mind, an absolute disgrace. That 20 policemen march into Kerala House, which by the way belongs to the state government. It's not some public commercial establishment, and actually challenge them on this is, to my mind, reflective of something that's really going wrong in our society.
But Dr. Tharoor, do you see this as a larger agenda of the Sangh Parivar, where the developmental politics is being replaced by religious politics?
Absolutely. What's happening now is that all of these things that are markers of Hindutva,
right,
including this business about beef and cow slaughter and cow protection, which has suddenly been converted into a major national cause, this is aimed at consolidating a certain kind of Hindu opinion in this country. Okay. But the people who are doing this and those in authority who are condoning it are doing this country a great disservice. Okay. First of all, they're profoundly alienating and making insecure large sections of our population. Mm-hmm. In Kerala, frankly, it is not illegal. Okay. I mean, forget about eating beef. Mm-hmm. Even cow slaughter is not illegal in Kerala.
But the way politics is shaping up.
But the fact is not that. In Kerala Bhavan, they were actually only serving buffalo meat. Mm-hmm. In India, when we have this distinction of being the world's largest beef exporter, that
but Hindu Sena doesn't distinguish between cow meat and the buffalo meat.
It covers buffalo, water buffalo, bull, ox and cows. And the problem is that the cows are the only ones, strictly speaking, who are deserving of any sanctity in the Hindutva Brigade's idea. So when this Kerala Bhavan menu innocently said beef fry, they're talking about buffalo meat purchased from NDMC approved outlets. And this whole nonsense has been created. It reminds me of the tragedy at Dadri when poor Muhammad Akhlaq was killed. And people burst in and broke open his fridge to see what kind of meat he had. What kind of country have we become?
Dr. Tharoor, I'll come to Muhammad Akhlaq's incident a little later. But what I want to ask you is some outrageous politics which is really being played out. Arvind Kejriwal is supporting Oomen Chandi, the Chief Minister of Kerala. Oomen Chandi saying that Kerala Bhavan is a state Bhavan and it's not a hotel. So a literate state like Kerala, not to mention the fact that state assembly elections are also not too far. Will this kind of politics have takers in a state like Kerala? Will people really get convinced? Will you really find the consolidation of votes happening on these grounds in a state like Kerala?
No, in Kerala, in fact, it will create a backlash against them. Okay. I think you can be pretty sure that this will hurt the BJP. Right now we have the local self-government elections, panchayats and city councils coming up on the 2nd and 5th of November. Okay. And this incident, which has made major news in Kerala, will hurt the BJP, not help it. But in other parts of North India, they think it'll help them. The problem is it's causing us not only alienation within our country, it's destroying our image abroad, and it's inciting the worst elements amongst our neighbors. I had a Bangladeshi friend come visiting who's very pro-Indian. And he says that thanks to what's happening in India now, the fundamentalists in Bangladesh, who were very much on the back foot, are being emboldened. That they say, look at India, it's a country where Muslims and Muslim interests are treated so badly. So these people don't realize how much damage they're doing to our country. You read any Western newspaper now, go for the last 1 month to the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Le Monde in France, Frankfurt Allgemeine Zeitung in Germany, any of the British papers. And what are the principal editorials about India? It's about mounting intolerance, it's about this kind of beef policing, it's about what you can eat, what you can wear. The whole culture of India is being reduced to these lumpen elements who have dragged our name internationally in the mud.
Taking you away from beef policing now, Dr. Tharoor, another pattern and a sort of a campaign which has been seen is the return of the Sahitya Academy Awards by the writers. I remember having read a piece of Gopal Krishna Gandhi, former governor of West Bengal, where he said that it's a landmark moment because it defines a new kind of protest where people have not resorted to the kind of protest, but it's a form of dissent which has never been seen earlier. Do you also consider this as a landmark moment?
Well, certainly with hindsight, I would have to say that my initial objection, which was in the first couple of days when the writers started returning awards, I said writers should write their protest rather than dishonor the awards. But I have to admit that it's gathered a tremendous amount of momentum and has captured the nation's imagination.
Right.
So it did turn out to be very effective.
Do you admit to the fact there's a new kind of an awakening?
There
amongst
is
the
an
writers?
awakening. See, the thing is, I still regret that they've returned their awards because the awards are not given by the government. You know, if these are Padma Shris given by the Modi government or by any government and you return them, it's one thing. To return an award, to my mind, which is done by a jury of your peers and recognizes your literary, creative, intellectual qualities, to my mind is sad because it dishonors an institution which I hope will survive this government and which I hope will continue giving awards to fine writing for decades to come. But having said that, there is no doubt that it's had a tremendous impact. We're all talking about it. We've all noticed it.
Right.
The fact that these writers felt moved to give up something that must have mattered to them when they won it shows the depth of their feelings. That, to my mind, has come across very, very effectively.
What, according
in a
to you,
national
is the
discourse.
best suited form of protest by the writers, if not giving away the awards?
Well, I mean, what
You're
I would
a
have
writer
said,
yourself,
I'm a
so-
writer myself, but I've never won a Sahitya Academy Award, you see, so I'm really not qualified to comment on my betters. But let me just say that I've always felt that writers have the power of the word, have the power of the pen or the keyboard today, and that's what they should use. But the counter argument I'm hearing from people is that, you know, you write an article or whatever, and it's read by those people who read it. But when you return an award, it becomes news. People talk about it everywhere. And that is a difference, which I have to accept has become certainly a dramatically effective form of protest.
But Dr. Tharoor, there have been accusations by BJP leaders like Arun Jaitley, who mentioned in his on his Facebook post that it's a manufactured paper rebellion. Do you really see this as a manufactured crisis?
No,
by
I
the
disagree
writers?
with that, and I've said so in writing. I disagree with Mr. Jaitley's analysis for a couple of reasons. First of all, I think that the writers are, by definition, in any society, the conscience of the society. It becomes their job in many ways to be what was once described by the American writer Kurt Vonnegut as the canary in the cage that used to be lowered down the mine shaft in the old days to see if there was enough oxygen at the bottom of the mine shaft for the miners to go down. They would name, and if the bird came up coughing and spluttering, or worse still, if the bird died because of lack of oxygen, then human beings were not sent down. Writers in many ways are like that bird. They are the ones who first see where the oxygen in our society is being stifled. And it is their job, it seems to me, to show that when they are gasping, when they are suffocating, society has to be alert. So that's first thing. The second thing I want to stress is that some of the arguments Mr. Jaitley used politically are rather cynical. He says, for example, that the rationalists who were killed, which is what the writers were protesting about, in addition to Dadri, the rationalists who were killed, he says, were killed in Karnataka, which is a Congress-ruled state, and in Maharashtra, when it was a Congress-ruled, Congress-NCP-ruled state, and in UP, Dadri was when it's a Samajwadi-ruled state, and therefore why should the BJP government have to carry the can? Now, the irony is that no one in their right minds in this country, no one believes that those parties ruling those states had anything to do either with the killings or with the atmosphere that engendered the killings. Everyone knows which section of our political space has been roused to a fever pitch with attacks on rationalists, on those who've been criticized Hindutva or Hindu gods or whatever, and everyone knows which section of society therefore has incited this violence.
But Dr. Tharoor,
so it's deeply cynical as an argument.
But there is another accusation by the BJP leaders. In fact, Arun Jaitley said it. And he said that, you know, because of the fact that Congress and parties like left are on the decline, their legislative relevance is absolutely on the wane. So, you know, there are these protests by the writers are actually sponsored by these parties. Would you really concede to what he's saying?
No, I don't, because as I said, the parties have their own forms of protesting, and they've been doing so. In our case, Parliament has been our preferred venue of protest. As you know, we ended up disrupting the monsoon session, protesting certain things of this government, and I'm afraid that parties normally choose their own venues. There'll be protests in Parliament, there'll be protests in the election booth. I mean, what are you seeing and hearing in Bihar? What you're hearing is protests of all of these issues there too from the political space. The writers have their own space and they've chosen to do this.
But Dr. Tharoor, what mesmerizes me, and what the BJP camp has also been talking about, is the fact that why have we not seen protests like these happening during the emergency? Maybe it wasn't vocal like it is now. During the time when the Taslima Nasreen's incident happened, when Salman Rushdie's book was banned, these kind of protests, these awards were never returned during those times.
Yeah. Well, since I didn't return an award, I can't tell you why, these people didn't do it earlier.
But
let me just say that the main answer to that general objection, I can't give you the specific cases, but the main answer is that the difference between what happened at that time and what appears to be happening today is a pervasive climate of intolerance that the government seems to be encouraging or at least condoning. I have some time ago written a piece in which I said if Mr. Modi could just stand up, not just about these particular things, but about the whole range of statements by his own ministers, by his own MPs and so on, everything from praising Godse to dividing the nation to Ramzadeh and Haramzadeh to saying that all Western influences must be cleansed from this country. All of these statements that people who don't agree with him should go to Pakistan.
And these writers have pointed out the steely silence.
If Mr. Modi had stood up then as Prime Minister and said, I am Prime Minister of all of India, I am instructing all of you, my followers in my party, that you cannot speak like this. Is not what I was elected to do. I was elected for development, and I tell you I will not tolerate this kind of thing, this kind of talk, that anybody who speaks like this will be dismissed from my Council of Ministers. Anybody who wants to pursue his own agenda can leave this party immediately. Not only will the protest die down, but the coverage and the exploitation, if Mr. Jaitley thinks it is exploitation, will die down. Because the fact is that then the Prime Minister will have been on the same side as the protesters. What's the point of protesting? The difficulty right now with the Prime Minister not saying this, by his studied silence, is that silence is assumed to be acquiescence in the statements, the logic, the perverted thinking, the incitement that his own followers are practicing.
In fact, on this note where you have ended, I'm going to take a break here. When we return, we talk about BJP's defense on Dadri lynching and what Prime Minister has actually said on intolerance. Back in a moment. Welcome back. You're watching To The Point with Dr. Shashi Tharoor. Dr. Shashi Tharoor, now let me ask you about the incident of Muhammad Akhlaq which happened. A highly misfortunate incident which the nation saw. But as a writer, what do you really feel? Do you find a common strand between the story of Muhammad Akhlaq and what has happened on the murder of the rationalists? Because the rationalists and the writers, they're both supposed to be a community which is in a minority. Muhammad Akhlaq was also belonged to a minority community. Do you see a common strand?
Well, the rationalists were all born in the Hindu faith, and so in other words, they thought they were speaking openly about their rationalist beliefs as people who'd grown up in that culture, but they were clearly rejected for saying what they said, and that's why, sadly, two of them were killed. When it comes to Muhammad Akhlaq, the parallel is more with this poor boy Mohsin Sheikh in Pune. Within a month of the election of Mr. Modi, what happened? A bunch of hooligans with hockey sticks looking for a Muslim to attack, found him coming out of a mosque with a skull cap and a beard looking very Muslim, and beat him to a pulp and killed him. And this chap, this victim was completely innocent. The provocation was allegedly some hostile posts about Mr. Bal Thackeray, which he had nothing to do with. Now you come to Mr. Akhlaq. The gentleman was accused of having slaughtered a cow and having the meat of that cow in his fridge. Now, number one, he had not slaughtered a cow. Number two, he had lived peaceably with his neighbors throughout his life. A certain section of our society and polity have taken it upon themselves to decide what's good for everyone else. That's what's fundamentally wrong. As I've often said, the meat ban, the beef ban is not about meat or beef, it's about freedom. And the point is, in a democracy, freedom is what we have to stand up for and defend.
But Dr. Tharoor, after Dadri lynching incident happened and Prime Minister made a speech on tolerance, do you think it really went far enough? Because it really catered to only the biological family. It didn't cater to the liberal space, to the intellectual family. It actually didn't cater to this kind of a family.
Oh, I see what you mean. No, I think the Prime Minister, frankly, has disappointed us by how far he has allowed things to go without strongly interrupting it and objecting to it. To say something is sad or unfortunate, anybody can say that. And that too, to say it 2 weeks or 10 days after it happened, it's too little, too late. You know, the Prime Minister speaks for the nation. When the tragedy of 26/11 happened, the Prime Minister spoke the very same evening. Mr. Modi is a great orator. He has a power of words. When a tragedy happens in our country, if he stands up and uses his words to rouse the nation's conscience, to express the pain in the nation's heart, he unites the nation behind him. He's missed this opportunity. Instead, he's divided a nation that he could have united.
But do you mean to say that secularism is almost losing its moral authority because now it's become almost like a selective outrage?
No, I would argue that the one thing that the secular brigade, if you like, has is moral authority, because they're the ones standing up for virtues of freedom, of fairness, of decency, of tolerance, of coexistence of different groups. Where is the lack of moral authority there? The lack of moral authority is in the part of those who are intolerant, who are denying others their freedom.
So what kind of politics do you really see it playing out? Because when Narendra Modi ji goes on the international fora, he talks about development, getting in investments, and then at the same time you have a parallel narrative which is running in the form of beef policing, cow slaughter, which is really a regressive agenda. Where do you see the politics heading then?
Well, at the moment the politics of our country are heading in a very, very bad direction, because we're seeing not just widespread intolerance and incidents of intolerance, but we're seeing them being tolerated, condoned and ignored by a government that ought to know better. With the result that we are spoiling our image internationally, we are spoiling our image in our own neighborhood, and we are making our own people insecure and uncertain, including particularly our minorities, who are increasingly feeling unwelcome in a society that they consider their own.
But Dr. Tharoor, if you see the larger picture, what do you think is giving uneasy moments to BJP? Talking about the incidents like blackening of Sudhindra Kulkarni's face, cancellation of Ghulam Ali concerts, incidents like these, there is a perception that it's not BJP, it is parties, it is the Sangh Parivar along with Shiv Sena who are trying to tarnish the image of a stable government like BJP. Would you really condone to this fact?
Well, that's a slightly obscure argument, because there's no question that they all belong to one Parivar. Whether it's the Shiv Sena, whether it's so-called Hindu Sena, whether it's the VHP, whether it's the Bajrang Dal, whether it's God knows how many other little fringe groups that exist that behave badly. The truth is they have all been encouraged and allowed to run rampant by the ascent to power of the BJP government of Mr. Modi. It's as simple as that. If it weren't for the fact that Mr. Modi and the BJP have such a compelling majority, these groups would not have been as emboldened as they have been by these events. And that's why we're seeing their courage to do these things that they wouldn't have done in the old days. The very people who can stop it are the people in power today. If Mr. Modi, as Prime Minister, if his authorities, his police, his Home Minister, cracked the whip on these elements, they would have to knuckle under. Instead of saying, oh, they're not letting us function, they're undermining our government. Well, they're your parivar, stop them.
Winter session is again going to be around the corner. Sometimes in the third week of November it's going to start. How is the opposition really going to gather energy? Of course, you would have the results of Bihar elections out by that time. And depending on what the results will be, the entire ethos of parliament will depend on what happens in Bihar. How are the opposition parties going to really coalesce at that time?
Well, I have no doubt that one thing that Bihar has accomplished is to bring more opposition parties closer together. It is interesting that this Mahagathbandhan of ours has been endorsed in the course of these elections by both Mamata Banerjee's TMC and herself personally, and by Arvind Kejriwal's Aam Aadmi Party and himself personally. They've all tweeted and expressed their support for this opposition to the BJP in Bihar. I think it's a sign that in Parliament also there'll be an increasing tendency to coordinate strategies and to cooperate against the government. And they've really managed to get everyone's backs up.
But keeping the Modi juggernaut at bay and to stop the Modi wave, I was talking to a few Congress leaders in Bihar who on record said that, a party like Congress has compromised on its ideology because our main objective was to stop the Modi wave. Do you really think that's true?
No,
on record, the Congress leaders have said this.
The Congress as a party has, I think, been very true to its ideology, which is one of pluralism in the country, respecting all sections of our society, including minority groups, extending protection to the most vulnerable in our society, and at the same time supporting an economic policy of growth plus the division or the distribution of the products of growth to the weakest and poorest sections of our society. That is a broad summary of the Congress philosophy, and that, frankly, we have never deviated from. Tactics is something else. You may choose in some states to ally with other parties. In some other states you may choose to run alone. It will depend on your assessment of the political conditions in that place and at that time. So I don't think that a tactical alliance in Bihar today suggests any dilution or compromise of Congress's core convictions. And on the core issues, I don't think that Mr. Nitish Kumar or Mr. Lalu Prasad Yadav disagrees with the Congress fundamentally.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tharoor, for coming on To The Point.
Thank you very much, Neelu.
So that's it on this episode of To The Point. See you next time with another personality. Goodbye and thanks for watching.